Zimbabwe remains on the edge and President Robert Mugabe is confined to his home as the military takes control of key installations in the country. Several of Mugabe's aides were arrested including the finance minister. President Jacob Zuma sends a special envoy to deal with the Zimbabwean situation. Zuma says any unconstitutional changes of government is condemned as that would be contrary to both the SADC and the African Union positions. Businessman Ajay Gupta writes to the Parliamentary Committee on Public Enterprises, refuting allegations made by suspended Eskom legal officer Suzanne Daniels. Ajay Gupta provides evidence showing he was not in South Africa on the date of the alleged meeting. The ANC Women's League in Mpumalanga endorses Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma for the top job. Premier David Mabuza gets the nod to be her deputy. And a setback for South Africa as France is announced as the host nation for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. After Public Enterprise Deputy Minister Ben Martins, now businessman Ajay Gupta has come out to refute Suzanne Daniels' claims of a meeting with them. Ajay Gupta has written to the Parliamentary Committee of Public Enterprises, refuting allegations made by the suspended Eskom legal officer. Gupta attached documents including his passport and jet movement details, which place him outside the country on the day Daniels claims to have met him. The papers and a time-stamped YouTube video place him in India from the 23rd to the 31st of July. And this puts in doubt the allegation by Suzanne Daniels of meeting Ajay Gupta on the 29th of July. And in the letter that is also addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, the South African Police Service, the Hawks and the NPA, Ajay Gupta says, and I quote, Suzanne Daniels was under oath when she incorrectly and intentionally made malicious claims, and therefore we are reporting her conduct to relevant authorities, including the police and the Assembly Speaker. And post-inquiry investigations, if necessary, criminal charges may be instituted against her. The allegations were made without Mr. Gupta being approached to hear his side. And that's the end of the quote. And Portfolio Committee interviews broadcast nationwide are taken to be true by the media and the public, and this causes untold harm in the consequences of such wild allegations being made. And this takes the number of rebuttals to Suzanne Daniels' testimony to 3 for now. Daniels says she attended a meeting with Ajay Gupta, Deputy Public Enterprise Minister Ben Martins and Duduzane Zuma on the 29th of July. Ajay Gupta has now produced evidence to show he was in India between the 23rd and the 31st of July. And yesterday, Public Enterprise Deputy Minister Ben Martins made his diary details public, showing his presence at Ronnie Mamwebe's funeral and the ANC NEC Lekgotla on the same day. Daniels testified that Ajay Gupta discussed former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe's pension payout court case at the meeting. Ajay Gupta's passport and jet details and video evidence shows he could not possibly be at the meeting. Ben Martins says it's peculiar for a lawyer like Daniels to remember only one topic discussed at the meeting. And Daniels alleged that Ajay Gupta and Martins spoke about talking to someone in Gauteng Deputy Judge President's office to delay Molefe's case. And the Office of the Deputy Judge President issued a statement saying they never received any request to change the dates of Molefe's case. They called Daniels' statement misleading. But Suzanne Daniels refuses to budge from her stand. She says she's not bothered by the documentary evidence provided by Ajay Gupta.
I stand by my testimony. I've noted all the claims a week later than when I gave my testimony. There's no concern from my side. I stand by my testimony. This is for Parliament to decide, as I said on the day. I have presented my evidence to Parliament, and it will have to assess Mr. Gupta and Mr. Martins' testimony in that light.
And after criticism of being unfair, the Eskom inquiry is finally going to give a hearing to those implicated so far. And sources tell ANN7 the Parliamentary Eskom inquiry is expected to hear evidence from Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown, and this is this coming Wednesday. And ANN7 has learned that former Eskom acting CEO Matsela Koko and former CEO Brian Molefe are also likely to be asked to testify. And some of the Eskom board representatives may also be asked to appear before the committee. And as per the sources, Tuesday to Thursday next week has been set aside to hear from those implicated. And there are several reasons for questioning a Parliament's process in the probe. Firstly, evidence leader advocate Ntutuzelo Varana was allegedly not following a fair process, and the parliamentary probe was not meeting constitutional requirements. Thirdly, Parliament committee was not hearing those being implicated, and there has been little cross-examination of witnesses and no attempts made to verify allegations. And in the inquiry gives the impression of being a kangaroo court with predetermined outcomes. And fears were expressed that the Parliament Portfolio Committee or the platform is being used to further political ends. And instead of focusing on corruption at large, the probe is seen as targeting a few individuals for political reasons. And a key question arises in light of the delays in inviting those accused of Parliament's work so far. Has Parliament's role of objective oversight been is hijacked for political campaigns? And we're joined on the line by Zamo Maldala, Radical Economic Transformation Coalition spokesperson, Tsepo Khadima, and Botsang Moelwa, political analyst in studio. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. What do we make out of all of this? Because for the Deputy Minister and Ajay Gupta to come out and refute what Ms. Daniels has deposed, who do you believe in this regard?
Well, the documentary evidence that is being produced to rebut Ms. Suzanne Daniels' testimony has led, unfortunately, just means the end of the road for this inquiry, that whatever outcome that they might want to produce at the end of the day is going to have no legal standing whatsoever. Safe to say that people's reputations would have been assassinated, or their characters would have been assassinated, and probably maybe that is the overall objective from the beginning, because you can see that everything else has been choreographed to bring about a particular end, and that particular end is not to seek justice, it's not to ensure that the wrongdoers are punished, but is at the end of the day to ensure that certain people, their characters are assassinated. But for Ms. Daniels, it's not sufficient for her to say that, well, she still stands by her testimony, because in her testimony that she led in Parliament, she never gave any factual evidence, and astonishingly, even the committee itself never asked her to adduce factual evidence to substantiate her allegations. So this is hearsay. And the people that are involved there, they are legally schooled. They should have known that hearsay evidence is no evidence at all. And they continue to rely on that. So the question will be, well, exactly what is it that they are going to do when they failed in their duty even to ask probing questions of Ms. Suzanne Daniels. But also Ms. Suzanne Daniels has not told us the most important. She, having knowledge of the law, she has not explained as to what constrained her, whereas there is positive duty that is placed on anybody who would have been in her position to have gone to the police as so required in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act of 2004, specifically Section 34. It places positive duty, and she failed to discharge that duty. She has never once explained as to what constrained her from discharging that duty, where she should have gone to the police the very minute she left the crime scene, which she has told us that the crime scene was at Melrose Arch. I think the nearest police station there is Wynberg. Why did she not go to Wynberg police station as so required in law? So if all this thing, unfortunately, it cements the view that some of us have held that this is a kangaroo court, is of got no legal bearing whatsoever. But this evidence as so produced today it means the end of the road for this inquiry. It will never be able to stand in any court of law.
And if she's not able to articulate sufficiently that there was either a threat or she was being gagged or whatever the circumstances may have been from revealing this kind of evidence, what other rationale could there be of withholding the information, Butsa? Until now.
Cindy, and to the viewers, look, she has never put a position whether she was gagged or threatened and she couldn't provide evidence. You know, she has never tabled such evidently in such a way that one will be on her side or think there's a sinister motives. But the lady is a lawyer by profession. She's an admitted attorney. She knows the rules of the law, and she was also in an acting position of head of legal services in ESCOM. So her credibility and credentials of being a lawyer and knowing the legal processes, it's not questionable. It is the conduct that is being questionable at this moment in front of the Parliamentary Committee. And as Tsepo said, you know, when I looked at those proceedings, two questions came to mind. I needed the word choreographed. I actually said, it looks like everybody who has sat in front of that committee has rehearsed. You know, they were told what to say, and it was rehearsed of what needed to be said. Because if you look at the attorney speaking in front of the Parliamentary Committee, that committee itself, I find it wanting. Some of the questions that they should have asked to that lady were questions like, give us the details of the meeting, what transpired. They focused on the names of the people who were purported to have been there and the date, which has now come out clear that actually it's utter lies, with material evidence being presented in front of us and the nation. But what is also of key, you know what Tsepo was saying to say, she could have gone to the police, she could have gone to the board of the ESCOM, she could have gone even to Parliament to report such activities. She did not. However, what Ajay Gupta is doing is not just writing to the Parliament and the Speaker, the Committee and the Speaker. He goes a further extent and writes also and goes to the police to approach the police and the Hawks and say, but this person under oath lied and is currently assassinating me as a person and he has lied under oath. What they can also even further do is to approach the Law Society of the country, because she's an admitted attorney and she knew what she was doing that is correct. And it's very embarrassing that, you know, MPs, Cindy, I'm very worried about, and I don't want to question our MPs, but if they are not performing in a level that they're expected to perform, one will have to raise those questions. The questions they raise to those people who appear before the committee. And I don't want to say, like Tsepo is saying, it's the end of the road for this whole case. We still have Brian Molefe going to sit in front of that committee. We still have the minister tomorrow going to sit in front of that committee. We may find out there's more lies that are going to be exposed with this process, which actually destroys its credibility.
Yeah, but Zama, in your view, it's not a foregone conclusion, as we're saying, that more witnesses, as it were, will be given an opportunity or, you know, to defend themselves. What in your view, especially when it comes to the public court of opinion, that the reputational damage, is there in your view a predetermined outcome, just in terms of how this portfolio committee conducted itself?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Cindy. Well, our view is really that when you look at Parliament, and we're going to take a step back and go and look at the whole Nkandla case, Parliament was found to not have carried out its duties. So now, at this point in time, it's very difficult to believe that the very same Parliament is going to be the one that's going to be carrying out its duties outside from achieving whatever political mandate and outcomes that they may be seeking and desire to achieve. The reality of the ESCOM scenario is that one has come to be aware of a certain legal opinion that's been written by one of the leading firms in South Africa that says that the whole BEE 51% provision for procurement is actually unconstitutional. So there's more that is coming to this. So these games that are currently being played, we just firmly see them as them being the current political games that are being played towards the ANC conference in December to try and get a particular outcome out of it by showing that supposedly those that seek the radical transformation of this country and its economy are on the wrong side of anything that makes financial sense. And that's the reality. The entire ESCOM inquiry that is being carried out by Parliament, from the terms of reference, the entire grounding of the basis that forms it is nonsensical. We've got huge capex expenditure that is sitting at Eskom that has not even been looked at by this inquiry. All it's looking at is particular individuals towards a particular outcome. And we all know that it won't carry any legal basis. So all it is pure politicking and nonsense.
Yeah, but then how do you correct that, though? Because if the process in itself was flawed and there was an intention to malign others for political gains or means, the minister would have to correct that and come out with evidence that, one, she's not captured. Secondly, she had done everything in her power to correct whatever wrongdoing may have been happening at Eskom.
Look, in our law, there's no requirement for the accused to prove their innocence. Now, I listened yesterday even to Mr. Koma, who supposedly was speaking or testifying in his capacity as spokesperson for the board of Eskom, where he actually gave an opinion, not evidence. And this committee or whatever, that's inquiry, accepted that opinion. He adduced no substantive facts whatsoever to support. And also the way that these witnesses are, by the way, are appearing or testifying before this inquiry, there is no nexus in terms of, at the end of the day, they are testifying to corroborate what allegation or who are the accused parties. First and foremost, the terms of reference have yet not been finalized, so we don't know whether it is accusatorial, whereby there are certain people who are accused of wrongdoing, or whether it's inquisitorial, where they are wanting to inquire about a certain set of facts where they're not yet clear as to really what has transpired, and they are attempting to find out that. And I cannot see how the witnesses that currently have led testimony, how they can be of any assistance in both instances, whether it's accusatorial or inquisitorial. There is no nexus in terms of the type of testimony that is being led, and also in terms of corroboration. And even worse, that when people are leading testimony that is not supported by any factual evidence whatsoever, that they never cross-examined, there is no follow-up, there's no probing into the testimony that they are leading. That testimony is just accepted as gospel. And I'm asking, if that is the quality of the lawmakers that we have in this country, then we have something to worry about more exceedingly, because we would have expected a higher level of professionalism, a higher standard from our lawmakers. And if lawmakers cannot even or comprehend and conduct themselves and articulate themselves on the very elementary issues of law, what hope then do we have that this inquiry can come out with a credible outcome? And I'm saying there will be no credible outcome whatsoever, and they're going to end up with this embarrassment. Now, the evidence, by the way, that has been produced by Mr. Ajay Gupta, as we have seen, as well as the evidence that was then produced to rebut by a deputy minister, that itself, if anything, has embarrassed this inquiry, this committee, because they should have ordinarily appreciated that there could be another version, and hence they should have observed at all material times the audi alteram partem rule. That is sacrosanct in our legal system in terms of our jurisprudence. How can it be, therefore, that those that are lawmakers go and even overlook the very elementary stuff of audi alteram partem and ensuring that the laws of evidence are applied, and in this case, whatever evidence is led, it cannot be an opinion. Now, they could have come to a finding having received factual evidence on what Mr. Koma is saying, because what he was saying was an opinion, but that opinion is like it's a finding that the minister is captured. But he didn't adduce any evidence other than hearsay and what he collated from newspaper articles, from the media, and he presented that before the committee, and hence I'm saying it's been a wastage of resources, a wastage of money, but I'm disappointed to say the least in our parliamentarians.
Fair enough in that the Constitution protects, the preamble that you are innocent until proven otherwise. fact of the matter, there are allegations that are coming from all sectors and all sorts of other witnesses that are deposing. The onus would still be on the minister and those in public office to at least clear their name, as we've seen with former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe, and the damage that has done not only to his reputation, his character, and moving forward, you know, that cloud of suspicion that you'll always have. Surely you must act in your defense.
Cindy, I don't think the law gives provision, and it has been applied in this case, to say you are innocent until proven guilty. The media, the former colleagues, and MPs have already found these people guilty. They've ran to conclusions. You know, if a chairman of Eskom or the current chairman of Eskom and a person who is supposed, Mr. Koma, to be responsible for integrity within Eskom stands up and make accusations of such nature in public space, inside Parliament, to say the minister is captured, the minister is corrupt. And when he's questioned, this is another interesting element. When Mr. Koma has been questioned, where do you base those allegations or that statement? He says after hearing and reading what the chairperson has said, and therefore, based on that, he believes that the minister is corrupt. And these MPs, they listen to that nonsense, which I describe as nonsense. It cannot be correct. Tsapo is correct. He said at the beginning, what is the fundamental principle for having this inquiry? Has it been tabled? We do not know. What is the reason? If they had a paper which was put on table to say, we are looking at the whole corruption allegations inside Eskom, they should be looking at all these so-called green contracts that are lasting for over 30 to 45 years. Why are they being left out? We are looking at the situation, and we should be very frank about it, of people who are black inside Eskom, who have been accused of corruption, from board to the former CEOs and other senior executives. And they've been accused of corruption because, in my view, they question some of these contracts that Eskom is having with the old lily white companies, and they wanted the status quo to remain like that. And it cannot be. When black people have government contracts in this country, and these government contracts are being renewed over and over, it's called corruption, it's called political connection, it's called, you know, favors you get from politicians who are corrupt. But when it's white companies, it's called green contracts. It can happen and nobody must touch that. And that's what people like Brian Molefe were trying to bring to the attention of South Africans, to say we cannot continue like this. Instead of listening to them and giving them a fair chance to explain, we accuse them of corruption. And it's a sad state of affairs. I want to see what Parliament is going to do with material evidence that is sitting in front of them at the moment. You know, it's not allegations. Ajay Gupta puts his passport, which has a stamp of the Department of Home Affairs, entry and exit into the country, his ticket, his whereabouts in terms of photos. The deputy minister has put material evidence on the table with witnesses who can attest to where he was regarding that. Even surveillance cameras that he had referred to say they can go to the hotel in Irene to look at surveillance cameras. They can go to the cathedral in Tshwane to can look at surveillance cameras and security cameras which were there during the funeral of the late Ntate Mamu.
But it's very difficult to influence somebody that has already made up their mind about you. So is this another parliamentary, maybe a procedural compromise in your view, Mr. Zamor, to hear the testimonies of those that are implicated in this case?
Well, let's actually not even bother to get into the details of what this inquiry is about. There's more to this than actually meets the mind, and it's all political. There's a context within which we are all operating right now. We've had Paradise Papers released, and there's particular sectors of media that are ignoring what has come out of there in terms of long-term contracts that could go back into the very same Eskom we are discussing right now. We've had long-term contracts that were signed as recent as 2015. Those are not being discussed. Medupi and Kusile are still not complete, and they are at more than 250% of budget. Those are the realities. But none of the parliamentarians are asking those questions because the entire inquiry is targeted towards a particular sect. And that is why it has terms of reference that were created by academics. So I don't know since when our parliamentarians are driven by university studies, because that's exactly what we are sitting with right now. At the end of the day, the state of capture, investigation, inquiry, whatever it may be, will eventually be set by the president. And all of these questions will be answered in their entirety from the time of 1976 and beyond, if need be.
But you don't think in getting the ball rolling to expedite this whole issue of state of capture to deal with the report as it stands and then continue on a more inclusive or expanded scope of investigation, Tsepo?
I think even before we get to that, I mean, I just want to follow up on maybe the point that Zamo has made there, that Professor Anton Eberhard, who's at the University of Cape Town, in fact, we should extend an invitation to him to come on the show here so that we don't shave his head in his absence. But he's the author of that report, which this inquiry seems to have really relied on. You know, I have read that report, by the way, and maybe the less I say about in terms of his quality and in terms of really his content, the better. Until such time that he can come and defend it, and we'll be happy to engage with him on it. And I know that his argument is going to collapse. That much I can assure you. But who is Professor Anton Eberhard? This is the man who was within the war room, which itself was unlawful. The war room that was established to run the affairs of ESCOM. The war room that was suggesting that ESCOM must be put into business rescue in 2015. The question therefore becomes that when that failed in 2015, what exactly motivated Professor Anton Eberhard to produce this study that has put us in this invidious position whereby our members of parliament are fumbling, but in their fumbling, damaging reputations of people, but even more worse, precipitating the calamity on ESCOM that will, at the end of the day, mean that the whole economy, the whole country will collapse. So we invite him to engage with him on his paper, but I can tell you it was nothing but shoddy. But above everything else, the end game here is to bring about the breakup of ESCOM, because there are people who already have declared that they are ready to buy the transmission lines. And Outer, which is another organization who must come and defend their position, they are sponsoring that move to privatize the transmission lines, which is nothing but economic treason. And others that are going to be buying.
You're opening up Pandora's box here,
sitting with 300 billion rand in guarantees. The question is, what's going to happen to those guarantees?
All right, can I make a commitment that we're definitely going to invite Professor Anton Eberhard and also investigate an Outer as well. That is a commitment that we make publicly. But to our guests, as always, much appreciated. With Zang Mwilwa and Tsepo Kadima, political analyst, and Zabo Madlala, Radical Economic Transformation Coalition spokesperson. We take a break. We'll see you shortly.